when I started to work that job, and I got to a point where I knew how my coworkers, I guess I didn't know how some of them really felt about me, but when people who you don't really care for them, you don't really like them, they have an opinion about you, and you think it's based off things like jealousy, because like I had instances at my job where where I went to a Christmas party, and I literally saw one of my boss's wives staring at me, and then I noticed that he was watching her staring at me. This literally happened in real time. It made me feel really uncomfortable at the company Christmas party, honestly. And I think that was some of the induced jealousy. Other induced jealousy, just people wondering why I wasn't in the lunchroom when I wasn't, during lunchtime when I didn't go in there. Why were people wondering where I was? Why does that matter? Why would I hear my female coworkers in the other room my first few weeks asking why I wasn't in the lunchroom? Why did it matter? And like these things I think induce some jealousy. And I think when I didn't, I guess, like utilize social skills how I should have, or communication how I should have, and I kind of like noticed all these things going on and didn't really want to be a part of it because I'm like there for a job, to do a job, not like some political social baloney that you deal with in like middle school, and a lot of people don't do anymore in high school, but that's kind of the thing that was going on. I wasn't too concerned at first, I guess, and then slowly, as I realized that like my family and friends in my support system, they didn't really like, I guess, like have much respect for me in general, and I didn't really but like just didn't really, I think my use of marijuana in college and not being around people and like seeing me use it and seeing me be as successful and have proven success, because like for me, I always needed my success to be proven to people, and that always came with grades throughout school, so I never had to like go out of my way to be like, no, I can do this. Like people would just see my grades and be like, oh, okay. Like I wouldn't have to like justify things. But after my grades stopped, that became like a part of my life, me justifying what I could do and what I couldn't do without grades to back them up, and just based off like opinions. I'm not gonna say I'm perfect, but it was pretty terrible in that sense. Maybe I'm partly autistic, and maybe my lack of communication skills didn't translate that well to the real world. But I think that has to do with their judgment on stereotypes and how communication is, and like if you communicate with somebody and they're a certain way, you assume that like you just make assumptions, you have poor judgment. So I guess that has to do with that. I don't know. But back to like the job and stuff, slowly my anxiety built once I realized that my support system and the people who, I wouldn't really worry about people who I think would know who I am and know what I do in my personal life. I wasn't too worried. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to this job every day where the back of my head, A, I don't want to interact with these people. B, I don't know what they're doing outside of my job. And people from my hometown, from my high school that work there, and the job was only like 20 minutes from my hometown, or like 25 minutes. So like that fear was in my head every day. And just imagine for a course of like, a few days is one thing, a few weeks is one thing. Imagine I was there for extended, maybe 6 months, even longer at a time until I went to another job working for the same company, working for the DOT to get out of the office. And they really just, I think the less I communicated with them and talked to them, the more they wanted me out of there, and the more they pushed what they wanted to push. And that is not okay. And it's not okay. And it's never going to be okay. And I'm going to keep talking about it until fucking either people just unsubscribe from my channel, don't want to listen to me, or their ears fall off, I guess. But I need to talk about how I felt through the process, because I think it's very few people had to deal with it, because I can relate to very few people with it when I talk about them with it. So I need to broadcast how I felt. fear built up in my head every day, and then there was no escape. I'd go to the bocce league in my town, just any family event, any tie to my community. There was just no escape from that fear that people were going to completely look at me differently, and there was nothing I could do to prove otherwise in my everyday life, because I go to my job like everybody else and have just as much, if not more, when you live on your own, live in your own apartment, have your own crap to deal with and your own just daily tasks to do like everybody else. Unless you live with your parents, then you have less stuff to do than most people. But yeah, like, just nobody, slowly over time, people listen to me less and less, and like that created more, like, different anxiety and more anxiety, and like just nobody wanted to listen to me. So I had to really, add this to part of my channel and talk about things like anxiety, talk about what I went through, talk about it as much as I can talk about it, and to make this world a better place. And that's what we're going to do. And people may not want to listen to me now. Maybe after I work out for a year, 2 years, and I look better, and people want to actually listen to me because of how superficial and stupid society is, maybe in 2 years they'll watch this video and then they'll listen to me. But they probably won't listen to me after me making this video now. But maybe after, if I work out for a couple years and I look different and people want to listen to me, and people want to, I'll probably still use marijuana. So if people want to use that as some excuse, like not to listen to me, or not to take me as a logical individual, or not to take my experiences for any relevancy or my perception for anything, then you're garbage. Don't listen to me. You're not a part of this because you don't know what happened and you don't understand it. So I would love to hear anybody else's experience with this kind of anxiety. If people were made fun of progressively over a long period of time, how that made them feel. Like, if you're in a situation where your anxiety was building up over time every single day and you couldn't get out of it and nobody would listen to you, and you literally had to escape from your situation to make your life a better life, I would love to hear your story. I would love just to hear how you handled it, and like how you made it better. Because I plan to just go to my land. I'm going to work out. I'm going to meditate, and I'm going to build myself up, because I realize that my reflection of society and how they want to reflect back to me in a superficial way is a huge part of this, as sad as it is. Because it's really, me keeping to myself and not really talking to people and just ignoring people was like kind of what led me down to this path. And just letting society reflect back how they felt about me, which was really pathetic and sad. So I love to hear anybody else's perspective if they had a similar situation. They were constantly made fun of and picked up in fear that would propel into the future and affect their life and tear their life apart, tear their family apart, tear their friendships apart, tear their friends apart. I was aware that all of that could happen when I was working at that job. And if you want to tell me no, you can go fuck yourself. So, but yeah, I would just love to hear somebody else's perspective from a similar situation. If you felt a similar anxiety that built up for the course of I'm not talking about a few days. I'm not talking about one instant in a war or, a traumatic incident that you have one flashback for. I'm talking about repeated every day with no positive reinforcement, no positive support we're talking about the course of years. Does anybody have anything similar?